Hi everyone, my name is Avery. Thank you for checking out my channel, checking out this video. So today I want to talk about a memory technique that's very useful for studying if you're trying to memorize something depending on, what your goals are, and it's called spaced repetition. And this is probably one of the most supported techniques for memorization. If you take like an intro cognitive psychology class, I learned this in a cognitive psychology class I took in undergrad. You'll see it in textbooks. It's well supported by evidence. So what is it? Well, it was discovered in the 1800s by this German guy, Hermann Ebbinghaus. So Germans always have these weird names. Anyways, what he found out was that, this is probably intuitive to most of you guys, but we learn something, and if we just learn it once, we'll probably forget it. But the more times you repeat that thing, the more likely you are to remember it down the line, which is pretty obvious. But what the interesting thing is that if you space out when you practice it, you're more likely to retain it in the long run. So, for example, imagine you have 4 hours in total, and let's say each hour is just one session of studying available to you to study for your test. And let's imagine the test, say it's in like 3 months maybe. When should you study? If you want to cram, you might study all 4 hours right before. Maybe if you thought, okay, let's prepare in advance, maybe I'll space it out. Maybe let's say 4 months. Then you study for 1 hour 1 month, and then 1 hour, then 1 hour, so on. But actually, the best way to study would be to, at first, you study very in quick succession with small gaps between each session, and then the gaps get longer. So, for example, you learn the material. Then the next study session should be 1 day after the first one. And then the one after that, you should wait maybe 3 days and then study. And then you wait a week and you study, and then you wait a month. And this technique is really effective. There's like a specific way to calculate how long you should wait between spaces. That's why it's called spaced repetition. But generally the rule of 1 day, 3 days, a week, a month, and then around a year, that's a pretty good one. You can look it up online, but the general principle is that you have increasing spaces of time in between each repetition. And this is really effective because if you just do this 4 times, like you repeat the material 4 times with, proper spaces, you will almost with 100% accuracy remember that information. And so what this means is that you can actually memorize a ton of things if you space them out, because it's not really that much work to just go over something 4 times. But the key is that you have to go over it 4 times, leaving enough breaks in between. And so the idea behind this, and like why it really works, is that you study the thing right when you're about to forget it, right? Because your brain's like about to get rid of that information, but then you're like, hey, that's important information, brain, like let's hold on to it. And if you keep going over the same material enough times, your brain's like, okay, like obviously this is important, let's get it into the long-term memory. So this is a very, very effective technique. It does require you to plan though, so this is not for crammers, but it's really effective. And if you're interested in trying this out, what I would definitely recommend is that you use, there might be some other software or programs that are good, but what I use is Anki. I'm not sponsored by Anki or anything, but Anki's pretty well known for being good at this. You can have it on your desktop, or there's an app for your phone, but basically it's like a flashcard system, but it will calculate the spacing intervals for you. So you'll see you make the flashcards yourself, or you can download ones that other people have made, and you can find those on Reddit or something. And then you will, you'll do the flashcard, and then Anki will decide when to show it to you again, whether that's in a day, a week, depending on how quickly you got it right, if you got it right. And so Anki will like calculate the ideal spacing for you. And Anki's great. I wrote the MCAT. I guess it was almost a year ago now, and I used Anki to study, and I didn't know anything, to be honest. Like I did a STEM undergrad degree, I did law. I'm like coming in like, what is, okay, no, I know what a cell is, but there was a lot of terminology to remember. And so I started studying a year out, because with spaced repetition, the earlier you get started, the better it is. And I know that can be a drag, like, nobody wants to study in advance, but actually you end up doing less work for yourself. If you start early, and by the end, you will barely need to study, right? Like, because the repetitions, the space between them will be so large. So you're actually saving yourself time in the long run. And I'll just give a little bit more context. If you remember something, if you try and remember something, after 20 minutes, there is a 60% chance you'll have forgotten it. 20 minutes, right? And if you go over the material again a day later, then the likelihood that you're going to forget it, it's not as much. There's around like 50-50 chance you're going to like forget it or not. But then if you do it a third time and a fourth time, by the fourth time, it's like almost 100% that you have that in long-term memory. So maybe I'll put up some links to, there's like forgetting curves that tell you how much you're going to remember based on when you study the material. And one thing I just want to add maybe before finishing this off, maybe this will be a topic for another video, but it is really important how you study, because this doesn't mean you just like look at the fact, every 4 months. You're like, okay, like let's read the book, let's read whatever I'm trying to memorize. No, you have to test yourself, right? Because yeah, I'll do another video on that, but if you don't test yourself, you haven't really learned it, right? So you have to, flashcards are really great because there's really no cheating on them, It says whatever on the front, and then there's the answer on the back. But if you just, read a book, you can read it and tell yourself, yeah, I knew that, but you really didn't know it. But it's easy to read and think you knew it, and that's tempting because it's hard to remember, and if you do Anki properly and you do those flashcards like 20 minutes a day, you'll have phenomenal results, but you do have to push yourself to really remember, and you can't be cheating and slacking and just checking the answers and then counting that as a correct. It's not correct if you have to check the answers. It's incorrect and you have to start over. So yeah, I'll just leave it with that. Spaced repetition, super useful if you're trying to memorize things. And I'd also say, even if you're kind of anti-memorization, which I know a lot of kids in undergrad are, it's like, oh, I gotta learn the concepts. Like, I get that. I did a STEM degree. It's more, there's really not that much memorization. Like, there really isn't. It's more concepts. But the more information you know, the easier it is to learn concepts, because then you can make connections between different things. Like, yeah, don't just remember like a random string of digits. Like, that's not helpful. But if, for example, you understood the different parts of the cell and like what they did, what each function was, Golgi apparatus, nucleus, then when you learn maybe about metabolism, it's going to make more sense. So I think it's always useful to memorize things. It just depends what you're memorizing, right? So don't waste your own time, but see if you can get started early. And by the time everybody else is cramming and panicking before exams, you'll just be like relaxed. You'll have that in your long-term memory. And if you're going to be studying like the same subject for 4 years at a time, just imagine if you get this in your long-term memory in undergrad, in your first year. You're set. You save yourself so much effort down the line. Instead of having to review the material and cram once a year, if you just do the spaced repetition once, you have material down for life. So yeah, let me know if this is helpful. I hope you guys try it out. I am a big fan. I highly advocate for Anki, and I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. But yeah, feel free to like or subscribe, leave a comment. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Bye.